All right, so let's talk about running flows on other pages. There's two different methods for this, or two different use cases for this that are the most common. The first one is where you have a grid of items, a grid of records, and you want to run an action, or you want to run a flow, on those rows, on each row. So I've set up a little example here where I have a list of things, and it's just using a grid element. So I have a grid list, and that grid list is displaying this page inside of it called a grid card. And what I've got is on the grid card, if I go look at the flows, I have this flow called set color. And the set color takes the color value out of the menu on the page and sets the background color of the entire card. Okay, so now I don't have anything triggering that event on this page. So from here, there's nothing that's actually saying go set that color. So if we look at that in the live view or in the preview, you're going to see that there's just nothing, no colors being set as the background color based on that. What I've done instead is on this other page, which is the parent page, I have a button here called Run Flow Set Color. So if I click that, it's actually going to run the flow on each instance of the page that's being displayed, and it uses the value from there and sets the background color of each one of those things. So let's take a look at what that looks like in that flow. So on this button, you can see there's an event that runs this flow called External Set Color. And inside of that flow, I've added an action that's called Run Action on Page. So that's inside the Add Action menu. If you just type Run, you'll see it in here, Run Action on Page. And in there, what you'll select is the page you want to run the flow on and which flow you're running there. So in this case, I'm running it on this grid card, and I'm running the Set Color flow inside of there. So I didn't do any restrictions on this, which means that it's going to run it for every instance of the page that's on the screen. So that's why it ran it for all three. But I could limit it. I could say, instead of running it for all of them, only run it for the ones where the color matches what I've selected here. So let's look at how to do that. There are these properties at the bottom called variable name and variable value. And what this does is it looks through the page instances. So it's going to look for all the grid cards in your UI, whatever's being displayed. And it's going to look inside of each one of those pages and look for certain variables. Now, variables could be set manually, like you might have set a manual variable on that particular row or that particular card. That basically, based on the record, you may have set a variable. So you can just specify a variable name here if you'd like to just type it in. So you could say, my variable or whatever it is. But what we have is an actual record value, right? So each one of those records has fields inside of it. So what I'm going to do is say, get the variable name that I'm looking for from a particular field. So I'm going to go to Project Structure and Fields here in the input argument type. And we're going to say items, which is my collection. And then which field do I care about? I care about the item color. And then the value for that could also be set manually. But instead what I'm going to do is say pull that from an element on the current page. So remember, I'm right here. So I'm going to basically pull that out of the color run flow field, which is this one. So now what this is doing is saying run this action called set color on the grid card page, any instance you see of that in the page or in the browser, but only run it where the item color is the same as the selection over here. Right? So now if I come back over here, and I'm going to refresh so those aren't set yet, they're all empty, right? So now if I change this, I'll say I want to run it only on orange and click the button. It'll go and it runs the action on the page with the matching variable value inside of it. So I can do those one at a time. So you can use this for all kinds of things. I actually use this in the Builder project itself to do things like on the left panel here, these are actually grid rows. This is a grid of the actions of your page. And whenever you click on one, so for instance, when I click on a nested action group, you'll see over here on the left, it deselects this one and selects the one that I clicked on. So if I do that, you'll see on the left side, it swapped it. And whenever I hit the X, it goes back to the other one. I'm doing that in the same exact fashion. When I click on this, I run an action on this grid row page, and I look for the one where the ID variable is the same as the one that I just clicked on. And then whenever I click the X and it closes that, it goes and does the opposite. It looks for the one that matches the ID of the page load or the page, whatever one I have open. So that's one method where you have these grid rows or grid cards, and you want to run these actions on one or more of the instances that are being displayed there. The other method of this is where you just want to run it on a particular page. So it's not about, there might not be more than one. There may not be more than one. A good use case for this is when you open something into a Lightbox, and the page that's displayed inside the Lightbox, so you open a page into the Lightbox, on that page maybe it's got a close button. So I have an example of that as well. So I have, I'm working on a job board template for everyone, and inside of here I have a button that does a subscribe to a MailerLite account. And when you click that button, that runs the MailerLite subscribe, and then if it's successful, it opens this success page here, this one here, into a Lightbox and shows the Lightbox. And then on the success page, on the close button, there's an action that runs an action back on this page that does the hide Lightbox. Right? So it's the same setup I was using, but this is another really common use case for it. So let's take a look at that one in action over here. So this is that little subscribe page. So when I click the button, it runs the MailerLite. It says, yeah, you did it, success. And then when I click this button, it's running that action on the other page to hide this Lightbox. Right? So those are the two most common use cases, but really you can use these action types for anything. When you're running actions on other pages, there's all kinds of uses for it. It's primarily around you have a certain thing you want to run triggered from some other place in your project, but that action type makes it work.